The first time I met SILAS North, the government handed me a leash and called it national security. The building they call the analysis center is all concrete bones and glass skin, like someone tried to design anxiety into architecture. Everything is the color of a migraine, pale gray walls, silver doors, blue-white lights that make your reflection look guilty. I walked in wearing my best armor. Navy suit, plain tie, no jewelry, no softness. People like to say, omegas are expressive. That's a polite way of saying available. I'd learned early that if you give them an inch, they write policy about it. A badge scanner chirped. A camera followed me like a suspicious thought. On my way down the corridor, a poster caught my eye, Consent IS Protocol, with a smiling alpha shaking hands with a smiling omega. Government propaganda is always funnier when you know the budget. I didn't smile back. Director Harlan's office was tucked behind a wall of glass so thick it could stop a bullet or a conscience. His assistant didn't bother with pleasantries. She just pointed at the door like I was a delivery. Harlan stood as I entered. He had that smooth, predatory professionalism betas like him perfect. No pheromonal leverage, no primal posturing. Just paperwork and a grin sharp enough to cut skin. Adam. He said my name like it belonged to him on a filing tab. Good. Sit. I didn't sit until he did. Petty? Yes. Necessary? Also? Yes. On the wall behind him, a digital flag waved silently. Across from it, a photo of a previous director shook hands with someone famous. Harlan collected proximity to power the way some people collect art. He tapped a folder. My folder. Thick. Fat. Too familiar. We have a mission, he said. Voice warm. You've been selected. That's the part where I'm supposed to say I'm honored, I replied. If this story caught you, subscribe. More are waiting. Do you want a salute too? I can do jazz hands if it's for morale. His smile sharpened. I appreciate your personality. It's why you're valuable. I hated that word. Valuable. It always meant usable. He slid the folder toward me. Across the cover was a codename in black. Operation Hollow Latch. Under it, a smaller line. Covert pairing required. The air in my chest tightened, like my body knew what my brain hadn't processed yet. I'm an analyst, I said carefully. Not a decoy. You're an omega, Harlan corrected, as if he were giving me an updated job title. There it was, the ugly little truth, dressed up in government font. I'm an omega who can tear your operation apart with a spreadsheet, I shot back. Don't confuse biology with obedience. Harlan leaned back in his chair, unbothered. That's the thing about bureaucratic predators. They don't bare teeth. They let laws do it for them. The target organization, he said, ignoring me, screens for bonded pairs. Their leadership is paranoid. They trust instinct more than ID verification. We need an infiltrator who reads as attached. My stomach dropped. No, I said. Flat and immediate. Absolutely not. Harlan's eyes didn't change, but the temperature in the room somehow did. This isn't optional. Then you don't want me, I answered. Because you're not getting me compliant. You're getting me creative. He laughed softly, like I'd told a charming joke. You don't understand the parameters, Adam. I understand them perfectly, I said. You're planning to strap me into a fake romance and call it strategy. It's a pairing, Harlan corrected. Undercover, temporary. Right, I murmured. Temporary dignity loss. Temporary bodily autonomy. Temporary national security. He opened the folder and flipped it toward me. Documents. Signatures. Dates. My signature. Old, scanned, embedded into a consent framework I had never seen in my life. I stared at it. My throat went tight in a way that had nothing to do with pheromones. That's forged, I said. Not forged, Harlan replied smoothly. Pre-authorized. When you accepted your clearance level, you signed a broad consent clause. Standard procedure. Everything is legal. Everything is recorded. Everything is already done. A knife smile. A paper cage. My hands curled on my knees, nails biting my palm through fabric. I didn't let him see me shake. I refused. Who? I asked, voice too calm. Who is the alpha you plan to chain me to? Harlan's gaze flicked, not to me, but to the one-way glass panel built into the wall beside his desk, a window that looked like a mirror from this side. He tapped a button. A light turned on behind the glass, and suddenly I understood why the corridor outside felt colder. There, on the other side of the one-way pane, stood a man who looked like the word command made flesh. SILAS North. He didn't move like someone waiting for permission. He stood like someone who had never needed it. Black tactical uniform tailored so perfectly, it might as well have been a suit. Hair neat. Jaw clean-shaven. Hands behind his back. Posture the kind they teach in training manuals and carve into statues. His eyes met mine through the glass as if it weren't there. No smile. No apology. No softness. Just a stare that didn't blink first. My body reacted before my brain could stop it. An involuntary flare of awareness that made my skin feel too tight. I hated that part of me. I hated that my instincts had any opinions. Harlan spoke quietly, satisfied. Commander SILAS North, Special Operations. He'll be your partner. Partner, I echoed, letting the word taste like poison. How romantic. Silas's voice came through an intercom, low and controlled, like he'd measured every syllable for maximum impact. I didn't ask for you, he said. But I won't drop the mission. No reassurance, no attempt to charm. Just a boundary and a promise. Something in me, something stubborn and sharp, clicked into place. Fine. If they wanted me leashed, they were about to learn the difference between a leash and a blade. I lifted my chin and looked straight at Silas through the glass. Congratulations, I said, sweet as a lie. You've been assigned a problem. And for the first time, his expression shifted. Barely. Not a smile. More like recognition. At the edge of my vision, Harlan's knife grin widened, certain he'd won. He hadn't. Not yet. But the stakes were clear now, written in glass and cold light and the silence, between an alpha who didn't blink and an omega who refused to look away. The briefing room smelled like recycled air and confidence. The kind of place where plans went in clean and came out bloody, but no one ever used that word. Silas stood at the far end of the table, hands clasped behind his back, eyes forward. He hadn't looked at me since the glass. I told myself I didn't care. My pulse disagreed. Director Harlan ran the presentation like a bedtime story for sociopaths. Slides flickered to life. Maps, aliases, blurred faces. The network calls itself the Hollow, he said. Unofficially, they traffic in leverage. Information, people. And most profitably, illegal mating marks. I leaned back, crossing my arms. So we're pretending to be what they sell. We're pretending to be what they trust, Harlan corrected. A bonded pair with a clean record and the right chemistry. Silas didn't flinch. I did. The next slide showed a floor plan of a residential block. Safe house, cohabitation required. Of course it is, I muttered. Nothing says operational efficiency like forced intimacy. Harlan ignored me. You'll embed as a couple seeking protection services. Commander North provides the muscle. You provide the analysis, verification, and behavioral reads. Your omega status makes the bond credible. My skills make it credible, I snapped. My biology makes it convenient. Harlan's smile tightened. Your biology makes it believable. The lights came up. I stood before he could stop me. No, I said. You don't get to gloss over this. I want safeguards. Adam. Safeguards, I repeated, louder. No full alpha control. No instinct overrides. No behavioral compliance protocols. No. I glanced at Silas, then back to Harlan. Ownership. Silas finally looked at me. Not challenging. Not defensive. Assessing. Harlan sighed theatrically. That's why we brought in a mediator. The door slid open. Dr. Keene entered like she belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. Calm posture. Neutral scent. Eyes that didn't miss anything. She nodded at Silas, then at me. Adam. I didn't bother asking how she knew my name. We moved to her office. Glass walls, but frosted. Cameras visible, honest about being there. I respected that. Dr. Keene sat, folding her hands. I've reviewed the proposed pairing, she said, and Adam's objections. Good, I replied, because I have more. She smiled faintly. I assumed. Silas remained standing, a quiet wall to my left. Close enough that I could feel the heat of him, restrained and deliberate. It irritated me more than if he'd leaned in. The temporary mark, Dr. Keene continued, will be synthetic. No instinct dominance, no neural override. The alpha will not have access to command responses. I exhaled. Slow. Put it in writing. It is in writing, she said, tapping her tablet. With keywords flagged, consent mandatory. Override blocked. Any violation auto-terminates the operation. I turned to Silas. And you? He didn't hesitate. I follow the protocol. That's not an answer. It is, he said evenly. Because the protocol protects you, I scoffed. You make it sound noble. It's practical, he replied. Then, quieter. And necessary. Dr. Keene watched us like a chessboard mid-game. Adam, she said gently. This is the cleanest version of this assignment you'll ever get. I knew that. I hated that I knew that. I looked at the contract. Page after page of legal reassurance, every line a reminder that my autonomy existed because it had been granted. Silas spoke again, voice low, not for the cameras. I'm not your owner, he said. I'm your shield. And those are different things. Something sharp lodged behind my ribs. I met his gaze, up close. His eyes weren't cold. They were controlled. There was a difference. I didn't like that I could see it. I signed. The stylus felt heavier than it should have. When I looked up, Silas was already stepping back, giving me space. On purpose. I held his eyes a second longer than necessary, letting every unspoken thought sharpen into one clear message. I still hate this. And I'm not grateful. He nodded once, as if he'd heard it anyway. The cameras blinked. The leash was on, and I was already planning how not to choke on it. The medical block was colder than the rest of the building, and that was saying something. White floors, white walls, white light that made every flaw visible and every lie harder to sell. This was where they turned bodies into compliance. Tech Rivera met us at the door, tablet tucked under one arm, hair sticking up like he'd lost a fight with a static field. He looked at me, then at Silas, then visibly swallowed. Well, he said, forcing a grin. You two look intimidatingly symmetrical. Silas ignored him. I didn't. Is that medical terminology? Rivera snorted, despite himself. If it were, I'd be out of a job. The procedure room was all cold metal and mirrors. Too many reflective surfaces for something that was supposed to be routine. A chair bolted to the floor. Sensors. A narrow platform where the alpha was meant to stand. Temporary. Synthetic. Harmless. That's what they'd said. I took off my jacket and folded it neatly, hands steady because I told them to be. My shirt followed. The air kissed the back of my neck like a warning. Rivera cleared his throat. Okay, so, synthetic mark protocol. Thermo-ink for surface patterning. Bioactivation to sync signatures. No permanent bonding pathways. No dominance loops. Think of it like temporary ink with a very expensive personality. Comforting, I said dryly. Silas stepped onto the platform behind me. Close, but not touching. I could feel him there anyway. Heat, presence, gravity. My instincts stirred like something irritated awake. I hated them for that. Alpha. You'll keep your eyes forward, Rivera instructed. Omega. Adam. You'll feel heat, pressure, maybe some emotional resonance. Totally normal. If anything spikes past tolerance, say the word. And, what's the word? I asked. Rivera hesitated. Override. I glanced at Silas in the mirror. His jaw tightened, not with impatience but restraint. Begin, he said. The first touch of the thermo-ink was cold. Deceptively so, a line drawn at the base of my neck, precise, clinical. Then the heat hit. It wasn't pain. Not exactly. More like my skin forgot how to exist without burning. My heart stuttered, missed a beat, then tried to sprint out of my chest to make up for it. I clenched my hands on my thighs. Breathe. Don't give them the satisfaction. The bioactivation kicked in, and suddenly the world tilted. Not visually, internally. Like my body had tuned into a frequency it hadn't asked for. Silas. His scent cut through everything. Clean. Sharp. Something grounded beneath it that made my teeth ache. It slipped past every defense I'd built with sarcasm and spite and sheer will. Anger flared, hot and immediate. Get out of my head. I lifted my chin, staring straight at my reflection. My face was calm, detached, perfectly unimpressed. Inside, panic clawed at my ribs. Behind me, Silas didn't move. I saw it in the mirror, his gaze fixed not on my neck, not on the mark forming there, but on the digital timer on the wall. 3 minutes, 2:45, 2:30. He was doing it on purpose, giving me that small mercy. Rivera hummed nervously. Vitals are elevated, but within range. That's normal. Totally normal. You're doing great, Adam. I shot him a look. You say that like you're not secretly betting on whether I'll punch someone. He grinned. I'd never gamble on government property. The heat peaked, then slowly ebbed, leaving my skin hypersensitive, buzzing. The mark settled, dark lines blooming just beneath the surface, intricate and unmistakable. When Rivera stepped back, I exhaled for the first time in what felt like minutes. Done, he announced. No override triggered. Congratulations. Silas stepped away immediately, increasing the distance like he'd been waiting for permission to breathe. Rivera tapped his tablet, and both our wrists buzzed as identical bands, locked into place, status synced, profiles updated, legends activated. On the screen, paired, covert status confirmed. I stared at it, something cold curling in my stomach. As we moved toward the exit, a brief alarm chirped from Rivera's console. He frowned. Silas turned. Problem? Rivera waved a hand quickly. No, just a microspike. Probably calibration lag. The mark held a fraction longer than average. My pulse jumped. Rivera smiled too fast. Nothing meaningful. Synthetic marks can be enthusiastic. I didn't like the way Silas's shoulders stiffened, but then Rivera clapped his hands together. Anyway, you're officially fake bonded. Mazel tov. He glanced between us, grin crooked and sympathetic. Congratulations, he said. You're officially fake unhappy. I walked out without replying, my neck still warm, my skin still humming. Behind me, the door slid shut, and somewhere under the burn and the anger, something quiet had latched on, like it wasn't ready to let go. The safe house was clean in the way only government apartments ever were, neutral. Colors, furniture chosen by committee, no sharp edges and no personality. The kind of place where nothing lingered long enough to feel real. Silas scanned it the moment we stepped inside. Windows, corners, ceiling vents. He moved like a commander even without a unit, cataloging risks with his body before his mind caught up. There are 2 bedrooms, I said, opening doors down the narrow hall. That one has better light. This one smells like disinfectant and regret. Silas paused. We'll use one. I turned slowly. Excuse me? Less suspicion, he said evenly. Couples don't sleep apart. It raises flags. I stared at him, incredulous. You could also try not breathing. That might look suspicious too. He met my gaze without irritation. We'll take shifts. I'll use the couch if needed. Oh, I said sweetly. How generous. Should I applaud or does the protocol cover that too? His jaw flexed. Adam. Relax, I cut in. I know. National security. Romance by instruction manual. The elevator ride down was silent, thick with unspoken boundaries. The wristband on my arm buzzed faintly as it synced with local systems. Paired, verified, watching. Outside, the city wrapped around us. Noise, motion, anonymity. We walked close enough to sell the story. Not close enough to start a war. The cafe was dim and expensive in that deliberate way. Low light, polished wood, people who watched without appearing to. Mara Vale sat at a corner table like she owned the place. Tailored jacket. Gold ring. Alpha confidence sharpened into something dangerous. Her eyes flicked to our wrists, then to my neck. Interest sparked. "Silas North," she said, standing. "You clean up, well. And you're punctual," he replied. Her gaze slid to me. Slow. Assessing. "And this must be yours." I smiled first. Soft. Practiced. "Adam." She reached out without asking and took my hand. Instinct screamed. My body reacted before I could stop it, pulse jumping, skin warming where her fingers brushed mine. I didn't pull away. I leaned in instead, letting the lie settle like a blade between my ribs. Silas's hand came to my lower back, not possessive, anchoring, just enough pressure to sell the bond. I laughed lightly, the sound sharp-edged beneath the sweetness. "Careful," I told Mara. "He gets territorial." Silas's thumb brushed once, deliberate. A warning, or an apology. Mara's smile widened. "Oh, I like you already." She watched us through the conversation. How Silas poured my drink without asking how. I rolled my eyes like it was a familiar ritual. How his hand never quite left my space. We were convincing. Too convincing. Every touch felt like glass scraping glass. When we left, Mara was satisfied. Curious. Hooked. The elevator ride back up was quiet again, but this time the silence pressed harder. Inside the safe house, the door barely shut before I turned on him. "Don't," I snapped. "Don't touch me without warning." Silas didn't argue. Didn't defend himself. He stepped back immediately, hands visible, posture open. "Understood," he said. "It won't happen again." The simplicity of it knocked the air from my lungs more than any fight would have. I swallowed, anger curdling into something messier. "This doesn't mean anything," I added, because I needed to say it out loud. "None of it." "I know," he replied. He believed it. Or he wanted me to. As he moved toward the couch, giving me space like it cost him something, I stared at the closed bedroom door and wondered when pretending had started feeling so dangerously real. The training space wasn't really a training space. It was a repurposed warehouse with padded walls, reinforced beams, and the kind of floor that had seen blood scrubbed out of it more than once. Officially, it was a conditioning site the Hollow used to test assets. Unofficially, it was a place where mistakes got corrected. Jace met us near the entrance, leaning against a stack of crates like he'd wandered in by accident. Beta, mid-30s, sharp eyes, easy grin, the kind of man who survived by being underestimated. "Wow," he said, glancing between Silas and me. "If I'd known you two were coming, I would have worn something nicer. Maybe lit a candle." Silas ignored him. "I didn't. Is this where you watch from a distance and pretend we're not about to die?" "Hey," Jace replied cheerfully. "I resent that. I also take notes." The Hollow's people didn't waste time. Two alphas stepped forward, broad-shouldered, aggressive, eyes lingering too long on my neck. "Verification," one of them said. "Bond check." My spine stiffened. This wasn't scheduled. Silas reacted before I could speak. He stepped in front of me, fast, solid, all muscle and instinct, blocking their view with his body. Just like that, I was shielded. Something in me snapped. "Don't," I barked, shoving at his shoulder. "I don't need you playing wall." One alpha smirked. "Feisty." Silas's voice dropped. "Dangerous. Back off." The tension crackled. I could feel it in my teeth, in the mark humming against my skin. I took a step to the side, forcing myself back into view. "You wanted verification," I said coolly. "Here it is." I met the alpha's stare head-on. Let him see the confidence, the calculation, the complete lack of submission, the hollow, respected strength, not hierarchy, control. After a long moment, he scoffed. "Fine. You pass." They moved on, interest already shifting. Only when they were gone did I realize my hands were shaking. Silas turned to me. "You shouldn't have." I shouldn't have what? I snapped. Refused to be treated like cargo? That wasn't what I meant. Then what? I shot back. Because it sure looked like you decided I needed covering. His jaw tightened. It was instinct. Well, rein it in, I said. I'm not your trophy. Don't block me like I'm fragile. Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Frustration. At himself. Get in the car, he said quietly. The night air outside was sharp, the streets slick with old rain. We slid into the surveillance vehicle. Jace in the driver's seat, humming like this was all entertainment. You two always argue like that? Jace said lightly. Or is this a special occasion? Drive, Silas said. Silence fell, thick and vibrating. Finally, I spoke. You said I was important to the mission. Yes. Be honest, I pressed. Is that because I'm good at my job, or because your alpha instincts decided I'm something to guard? Jace made a low, interested noise. Oh, this is good. Silas didn't look at me when he answered. You're important because you see things others miss, he said. Because you kept us from being exposed tonight. Because without you this operation collapses. He turned then, eyes steady. Not because of instinct. I searched his face for the lie. Didn't find one. And, he added, you don't need shielding. You proved that... The car slowed. Jace glanced back, smirking. For what it's worth, Adam. You scared them more than he did. I felt it then. Something loosening in my chest. Not trust, not comfort. Respect. A short laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Surprised. Sharp. I clamped my mouth shut, startled by my own reaction. Silas's brow lifted a fraction. Was that laughter? Don't get used to it, I muttered. But as the car pulled away into the night, the mark at my neck thrummed, not like a chain, like a challenge. The safe house never really slept. It hummed. Wires, vents, distant traffic, bleeding through reinforced glass. I lay on the edge of the bed, staring at the ceiling, counting breaths like it might make the night behave. It didn't. The mark at my neck pulsed, warm beneath my skin. Not painful. Worse. Present. Like a thought that wouldn't finish forming. I sat up, heart racing for no clear reason. No. There was a reason. Fear slid through me, sudden and sharp, ice cold in my chest. Not mine. I knew my own fear. It burned. This was different. Controlled. Familiar. The kind that came from someone trained never to show it. Silas. I was on my feet before I could argue with myself, padding toward the bathroom. Steam leaked out from under the door, fogging the hall mirror. I pushed it open. Silas stood at the sink, shirtless, hands braced against cold porcelain. His head was bowed, water running but untouched. In the mirror, his face looked older, tired, human. He glanced up, startled, not by my presence, but by the fact that I could feel him seeing me. I didn't wake you, he said. You didn't, I replied. Your emotions did. He stiffened. The steam wrapped around us, softening the edges. For once, there was no armor, just scars, old ones, pale and precise, mapping his ribs like quiet memories. That shouldn't be happening, he said. Yet, here we are. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You're scared. A pause. Then, honesty. Yes. Of what? I asked. Silas shut off the water. The silence after was heavy. Losing people, he said finally. Again. The admission hit harder than any shouted confession. He straightened, grabbing a towel but didn't look away. I became a legend because legends don't hesitate, he went on. They don't freeze. They don't choose wrong. And the cost? I asked quietly. His jaw worked. Everyone who stood too close. We moved to the kitchen without discussing it, sitting across from each other at the small table. The clock on the wall read 3:07 a.m. I studied him like a problem I hadn't wanted to solve. The way his hands shook, just barely. The way his eyes tracked exits out of habit. You don't sleep, I said. Neither do you. Occupational hazard. A beat. This bond. This mark, he said carefully. If it's interfering, if it's pushing things it shouldn't, I can get it removed. The words landed between us, unexpected. I laughed once, sharp. You'd do that? Yes. No hesitation, no bargaining. I searched his face, looking for the catch. Found none. Why? I asked. Because it was supposed to be a tool, he said. Not a weapon. Something in my chest tightened. Not softened. Aligned. I stood. Don't be a martyr. I'm not. I headed back toward the bedroom, then paused in the doorway. The mark pulsed again. Quieter now. I didn't turn around. Didn't say thank you. But I didn't close the door all the way either. The gap was small, barely noticeable. Enough for light to slip through. The docks smelled like rust and old water, a metallic tang that crawled into your lungs and stayed there. Floodlights cut through drifting smoke, turning shadows into something alive and suspicious. This was the Hollow's kind of place. Temporary, deniable, dangerous. Victor Crane stood at the center of it all like a king without a throne. He was an alpha in the way storms were, quiet until you were already soaked. Impeccably dressed despite the grime, eyes sharp and amused, nose twitching as we approached. Well, he said, voice smooth. If it isn't Commander North and his partner. His gaze lingered on my neck. I felt it instantly. The subtle pull. The way my mark warmed as if responding to scrutiny. Victor noticed. Interesting, he murmured. Synthetic. Clean. But. His smile thinned. Carrying depth. Silas didn't move. You called this meeting to discuss logistics. Of course, Victor replied, still watching me. But chemistry fascinates me. Especially when it's trying very hard not to exist. I stepped forward before Silas could. Depth comes from alignment, I said coolly. Shared stress, shared risk. Your operation would know that. Victor's eyes flicked to mine, measuring. You speak like someone who's been underestimated. I smiled. I rely on it. The exchange was brief but loaded. Data chips passed, coordinates exchanged, lies stacked neatly atop half-truths. Victor circled us as he spoke, like a predator, testing the air. Then it happened. A shout. Movement too fast. A body, lunging out of the smoke. Silas reacted instantly, pushing me back as he turned, but not fast enough. The blow caught him across the shoulder, sharp and brutal. Blood darkened his sleeve. He didn't fall. I felt it anyway. The shock, the pain he swallowed whole, the surge of focus that followed. North, Victor barked, half annoyed, half impressed. Control your people. Silas's voice was steady. Miscommunication. The situation spiraled. Raised weapons, shouted orders, the kind of chaos that devoured plans whole. I made a decision. I stepped into the noise, voice cutting through it. The shipment is compromised, I said, loud enough to carry. Your secondary route is burned. I can prove it. Victor's attention snapped to me. Go on. I fed him data. Real enough to be credible, curated enough to redirect his attention away from Silas and toward a phantom threat I'd built on the fly. A lie with bones. Victor studied me, then laughed softly. You're dangerous. Yes, I agreed. That's why I'm useful. He waved a hand. Get them out of here. Smoke swallowed us as we ran, boots pounding concrete, breath tearing from my chest. We didn't stop until we were deep in the maze of corridors, alarms screaming behind us. Silas staggered then. Just a fraction. I caught him without thinking, fingers pressing to his neck, to the mark, searching for the pulse that told me he was still here. Alive. Our faces were too close. My hand lingered, heat flaring where skin met skin. Don't, I whispered. To him or to myself, I wasn't sure. He didn't touch me back. Didn't move. I pulled away sharply. Anger flooding in to replace the rush. At him. At the mark. At myself. This was not what I'd agreed to. This was not what I wanted. And yet, as we disappeared into the night, the word almost echoed louder than the gunfire behind us. I knew something was wrong before anyone said a word. The medical block greeted us again with its antiseptic breath and unforgiving lights. Silas was ushered toward trauma care. Efficient hands already cutting fabric, assessing damage. I barely registered it. My skin felt wrong, too aware, like it was listening. I caught my reflection in a mirrored panel near the sink and froze. The mark at the base of my neck had changed. Not in size, in depth. The lines weren't just ink anymore. They looked layered, textured, like something that had grown inward instead of sitting on the surface. The pattern pulsed faintly, slow and steady, synchronized with a rhythm that wasn't just mine. My stomach dropped. "No," I whispered. Dr. Keene appeared beside me without ceremony, tablet already in hand. She followed my gaze, her expression tightening in a way that made my blood run cold. "How long?" she asked. "Since the docks," I said. "Since before." She scanned me, silent, thorough. The seconds stretched until my hands curled into fists. "Say it," I snapped. "Say I'm imagining it." She didn't. "The synthetic mark stabilized," she said quietly. "Under extreme stress and prolonged resonance, temporary bonds can, rarely, convert." "Convert," I echoed. "That's a very clean word for theft." Her eyes met mine. "Adam, it's real." The room tilted. "No," I said louder. "That's not possible. I didn't consent." "You consented to the temporary protocol," she replied gently. "Not to the outcome. But biology is not destiny," I cut in. "And it sure as hell isn't permission." Silas stepped into the room then, arm bandaged, face pale but controlled. He took one look at me and knew. "What is it?" he asked. I rounded on him, fury blazing hot and immediate. "Did you know?" His brow furrowed. "Know what?" "Don't," I hissed. "Don't play dumb. This," I gestured sharply to my neck. "Did you plan this? Did you want this?" The accusation landed hard. Silas didn't raise his voice, didn't step back. He took it full on. "No," he said. "And if you think I did—" He stopped, jaw tight. "I'm sorry the world taught you to expect that." The words punched the air from my lungs. I laughed, sharp and broken. "Oh, spare me. You don't get to act noble now. This system, this mission, it always ends the same way. Omegas don't choose. We adapt." Dr. Keene watched us, silent, knowing this wasn't her fight anymore. I turned away, pacing, heart hammering. "Freedom matters more than fate," I said. "More than instincts. More than some biological accident dressed up as romance." Silas followed me out onto the balcony, the night air biting, the city spread beneath us in a grid of lights and secrets. "And freedom," he said evenly, "matters more than my career." I spun. "What does that mean?" "It means I won't claim a bond you didn't choose," he said. "It means if command pushes for consolidation, I'll break the order." My laugh this time was bitter. "You'd burn everything for this?" "For you," he corrected. "For your right to say no." The sincerity in his voice terrified me more than the mark ever could. I shook my head, backing away. "I won't accept it. Not like this. Not because my body decided for me. Silas didn't reach for me, didn't try to stop me." "Then don't," he said. "I won't follow." That was the worst part, that he meant it. I turned and walked away before the tremor in my hands could betray me. Down the stairs, through the corridor, past the cameras that recorded everything except choice. Behind me, the mark burned, not like a chain, like something waiting. I didn't look back. The headquarters looked different when you walked into it knowing you were about to burn a bridge. Same glass corridors, same flags, same cameras that never blinked. But now every reflection carried a question I didn't want to answer. How much of yourself are you willing to lose before they stop asking for more? Director Harlan was already waiting when we arrived. Of course he was. Men like him didn't wait for consequences, they scheduled them. He didn't bother offering a seat. "Sit," he said anyway. I stayed standing. Silas stood beside me, a quiet presence that somehow made the room smaller. Not protective, not claiming, just there. Harlan tapped his tablet, eyes gleaming. "The stabilization has been confirmed. Congratulations." You've exceeded expectations. That wasn't the deal, I said. The deal evolved, Harlan replied smoothly. The bond is real now. That makes you invaluable. I felt it then. The way the word you slid sideways, turning into property. No, I said. It makes us compromised. Harlan's smile thinned. It makes you credible. The Hollow will never doubt you now. We're formalizing the pairing. Public record. Full integration. Silas's head snapped toward him. Absolutely not. Harlan waved a hand. Commander, let's not be sentimental. This is bigger than individual comfort. Comfort? I echoed. You're talking about ownership. Harlan's eyes finally hardened. You are assets of the state. Both of you. Your autonomy is conditional. There it was. The truth. Stripped of its paperwork. I looked at Silas, expecting... What? Silence? Resignation? Instead, he stepped forward. The operation is over, he said. Harlan laughed. You don't have that authority. I do now, Silas replied. I'm pulling Adam out. Effective immediately. Harlan's smile vanished. If you do that, you burn your career. Silas didn't hesitate. Then it burns. The room went still. Harlan leaned in, voice low and vicious. You think this is noble? I have files on him. Psychological profiles, past evaluations. One word from me and he's unfit for clearance. Unemployable. I felt the threat like a hand around my throat. Silas reached into his jacket. For a heartbeat, I thought he was going for a weapon. Instead, he pulled out the official order, printed, signed, sealed. He tore it in half. Once, twice. The sound was quiet. Final. I'm done taking orders that violate consent, he said. If you want to punish someone, punish me. Harlan stared at the pieces, then back at Silas. You'll regret this. Maybe, Silas said. But he won't. He turned to me then, and whatever he was about to say mattered more than anything Harlan could threaten. You don't owe me a choice, he said quietly. Not now. Not ever. I opened my mouth. Closed it again. There was nothing I could say that wouldn't fracture something fragile. The corridor outside was lined with cameras, each one watching as we walked past. I could feel the weight of the mark on my neck. Real, alive, unwanted. In the parking structure, the night swallowed us whole. Empty concrete. Cold air. The city distant and uncaring. Silas stopped beside his car. This is as far as I go. I nodded, throat tight. He didn't reach for me. Didn't look at the mark. Didn't ask. I hope, he said, after a moment, that one day you choose something that doesn't hurt. Then he got into the car and drove away. I stood there alone, the echo of his engine fading into silence. The mark pulsed once, a reminder I hadn't asked for. I pressed my fingers to it anyway, not in acceptance, in defiance. And in the empty parking lot, under flickering lights, I felt the full weight of freedom and how lonely it could be when you paid for it yourself. My apartment was small enough to feel honest. One room, narrow kitchen, a couch that doubled as a bed when insomnia won. Shelves of books I'd collected like armor, the kind with margins dense enough to hide in. A kettle that whined like it disapproved of my life choices. No cameras, no protocols, no orders. I stood just inside the door for a long moment, rain tapping against the window like it wanted in too. The city outside was blurred into streaks of light and water. Everyone else still moving. Me. Paused. For the first time since this started, there was no enemy to argue with. No role to play. Just me. I shrugged out of my jacket and touched the mark at my neck. Slow, deliberate. It didn't burn. Didn't pull. It was warm, steady, almost polite. Like it knew better than to demand anything right now. I'd always said I hated alphas because they took power, choice, space. The truth was uglier. I hated alphas because the first one I trusted taught me how easily protection became possession. How quickly I'm doing this for you turned into you owe me. I learned then to sharpen my words, to weaponize my mind, to never, never let instinct win. I'd survived because I refused to bend. And yet, Silas North had been handed every excuse to break me open. Rank, biology, law. He could have claimed authority with a word. He never had. Not when he shielded me. Not when he stepped back. Not when he tore the order apart instead of tightening it. The kettle clicked off. I poured water over a tea bag I didn't remember choosing, and sat at the small table, hands wrapped around the mug like it might anchor me. The mark pulsed once, and with it came something faint but unmistakable. An echo. Not a command, not a pull. A thought, stripped bare of pride. I did the right thing, even if it costs me. Silas. The realization hit harder than anger ever had. He wasn't reaching for me. He wasn't asking. Whatever this connection was, it carried no expectation, just truth. I closed my eyes, rain noise filling the silence. For days, I'd been fighting the mark because it felt like fate, like something imposed, like another leash with prettier language. But maybe fate wasn't the enemy. Maybe the enemy was being told I didn't get to decide what to do with it. I stood and grabbed my jacket again. Outside, the rain soaked through my hair and collar instantly, cold and real. I walked without destination, letting the city move around me, each step loosening something tight in my chest. I didn't forgive the system. I didn't forget the damage, but I stopped pretending I was powerless. When I turned back toward home, decisions settling into place like a spine straightening, the mark felt lighter, not gone, waiting. For me, I wasn't ready to accept a bond, but I was ready to choose what came next. And this time, no one was signing for me. The shooting range smelled like oil and burned metal. Honest smells, at least. No glass walls. No slogans about consent. Just targets, echoing shots, and people who knew exactly why they were here. Silas stood at the far lane, sleeves rolled up, no insignia on his clothes, no rank on his shoulders, just a man lining up a shot, steady hands, controlled breathing. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked unguarded. I didn't announce myself. I didn't need to. The mark stirred. Quiet recognition, not a pull. He lowered the weapon before I spoke. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I know," I replied. "That's why I came." He turned, really looked at me. There was no surprise in his face, only caution, like he was handling something fragile he refused to grip too tightly. "I ended the operation," he said. "They won't come after you. Not officially, and unofficially?" His mouth curved, humorless. "I broke enough glass to make that difficult." "Good," I said. "I hate paperwork." A snort came from behind us. Jace leaned against the wall, coffee in hand, pretending very badly not to eavesdrop. "Wow," he said. "This is either a heartfelt reunion, or I'm about to get assigned extra guard duty." "Go away," Silas said without heat. Jace lifted his cup. "I'll be right here. For safety." I walked closer, stopping just outside Silas's space. Close enough to be deliberate, far enough to be clear. "I didn't come to thank you," I said. "I didn't expect you to." "Good. Because this isn't that." He waited. Gods, he was good at that. "I came because I need to say this out loud," I continued. "And because if I don't, I'll convince myself I imagined everything." Silas nodded once. "Then say it." I took a breath. Felt the mark, warm, present, not demanding. "These are my terms," I said. "No alpha ownership. Ever. Agreed. No decisions made for me. Even if you think they're right. Understood. No lies. No strategic omissions dressed up as protection." That one took a second longer. "Then, yes." I searched his face for resistance. Found none. "And," I added, voice sharper than I meant it to be, "if you ever put yourself between me and danger without asking again, I will punch you." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "Fair warning noted." Jace coughed loudly. "I'd pay to see that." "Leave," Silas said again. Jace raised both hands. "I'm gone." Romance secured. He vanished toward the exit, whistling. The silence that followed was different, lighter, like something had finally unclenched. I don't want to be your omega, I said. Silas didn't flinch. I don't want a role written into my bones, I went on. I don't want destiny or instinct or biology deciding what I owe you. I know, he said quietly. I stepped closer, this time into his space. The mark warmed, not flaring, waiting. I want to be your choice, I said. Not your bond, not your responsibility. Your choice. His breath caught, just barely. You already are, he said. You just didn't know it yet. I laughed then, soft, disbelieving. Careful, Commander. That almost sounded like a line. In my defense, he replied, I'm very out of practice. We left the range together and walked to a cafe down the street. Small, warm, mismatched chairs, the kind of place that didn't care who you were as long as you paid and didn't bleed on the floor. We sat. We argued about coffee. We disagreed about pastry choices. It felt absurdly normal. When I reached up and touched the mark, on purpose, the sensation was different. No resistance. No panic. Just alignment. I'm not accepting this because I have to, I said. I know, Silas replied. I'm accepting it because I want to. The mark settled. Not tighter. Clearer. And for the first time, it felt like something I'd chosen, not something done to me. Dawn found us on the roof, because dawn always tells the truth first. The city lay beneath us, all softened edges and waking light, traffic beginning to hum like a living thing stretching its limbs. Wind tugged at my coat and threaded cool fingers through my hair. For once, the mark at my neck was quiet, not dormant, not demanding. Just there, a presence that waited. Silas stood beside me, not in uniform. No insignia, no command stitched into his shoulders. He looked lighter, tired, yes, but unburdened in a way that didn't come from sleep. They're closing the file, he said, watching the sun climb. Partially, I snorted. Of course they are. The Hollow lost 2 distribution nodes and 3 intermediaries, he went on. Enough to look productive. Not enough to make enemies permanent. Bureaucracy's favorite outcome, I said. Motion without consequence, Silas nodded. Harlan's framing it as a strategic recalibration. Translation? Pretend it never happened. He didn't argue. He didn't have to. We both knew how these things ended. Reports scrubbed, names reassigned, blame diluted until it tasted like water. And you? I asked. He breathed out slowly. Demotion. Desk rotation. No field command for a year. I turned to him then, searching his face. You regret it? No, he said immediately. Then, after a beat, softer, I regret the damage. Not the choice. Something settled in my chest. Not relief. Alignment. I have a counter, I said. He raised a brow. I assumed you would. I told him what I'd done. Not loudly. Not dramatically. I'd prepared a release, sanitized but sharp, built on verified data, anonymized testimony. And a legal framework that made burying it riskier than acknowledging it. A controlled leak to a civilian oversight channel that loved nothing, more than quietly forcing institutions to clean their own messes. No spectacle. No blood. Just leverage. Silas listened without interrupting. When I finished, he exhaled a laugh, short, incredulous. You didn't break the system. I redirected it, I said. Systems hate unpredictability. They love liability. That might be the most dangerous thing I've heard you say. Don't flatter me, I replied. I'm an analyst. The sun crested the skyline. Light spilled across glass and steel. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, You don't owe me anything. I know. And I won't claim. I know. I cut in gently. I turned to face him fully. Listen carefully, Commander. Former Commander. Whatever. A corner of his mouth twitched. I don't want to be your omega, I said. The words landed clean. True. I don't want a role written into my biology. He nodded. No flinch. No argument. I want to be your choice, I continued. And I want you to be mine. The wind tugged at us, impatient. Silas lifted a hand. but stopped short, waiting. I stepped in, closed the distance myself. When my fingers brushed his wrist, the mark warmed, not flaring, not pulling, responding. Yes, he said. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. We stood there a moment longer, the city fully awake now, the future unwritten and therefore usable. At my apartment door later, I paused with the key in hand, looked back at him. Stay? I asked, casual as a dare. He smiled then, not a legend's smile, a man's. I opened the door, and as the lock clicked, the thought returned, the one that had started. Everything, now stripped of its anger and sharpened into truth. They handed me a leash. I turned it into a ribbon, then tied it myself.